gritty little player.
Yep.
No doubt about it.
Yep.
High football IQ.
Yeah.
You know, he's a real big blue
Really
guy.
Yeah,
Right?
brings his
Whatever.
hard hat and lunch pail every day and keeps his
I'm
stick
so
on
sorry.
the ice. Yeah.
Damn it. This is a guy.
This is a guy.
Sights and sounds and edges found. You will now get down with the Underground, the Dynasty Underground, the show that goes to the depths of the Dynasty landscape. I am Trav, hosting and West Coastin'. With me, of course, the wise man, Jax Falcone, murderer of spiders, saver of families. How are you tonight, Jax?
I'm fine now. We averted crisis. I had a gigantic spider right above my general area, but everybody's safe now. We're all happy. We're good. He's on the wall, flattened. I normally don't kill spiders. I'm going to be square with you. I like spiders, but this was a scary ass spider. Number one. Number two, he was interrupting our show, which I felt was a crime, and all crimes will be punished with death.
It was disrespectful.
Absolutely. It was quite the feat of dominance by Jax. There were children screaming everywhere, but crisis was averted. And of course, from the corner office with the view, Mr. Processor of Processes, which I think is ready to get kicked into high gear, being this point in the offseason, Mr. Joe Kuvatakis. Dino Joe, what's cracking this evening, fella?
Oh, yeah. It is definitely time to start processing. But you actually just triggered me with your open. The Reese's Senior Bowl. Thank you. I can't tell you how many YouTube videos I watched this week reporting on the Senior Bowl, how many podcasts I listened to, and how many people call it Reese's. Reese's Senior Bowl. It's called Reese's Pieces for a reason, because it rhymes. Where are you getting Reese's from? It drives me fucking nuts.
Can you say Reese's Pieces?
That's a crime. That's worse than your freaking aggressive spider.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm calling them Reese's Pieces from now on.
It's drive me nuts all week.
The next step is Reese's Feces, and nobody wants any part of that. I've heard this too, Joe.
In your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, straight out of your ass. I've heard this Reese's thing too, Joe, and it drives me absolutely nuts. There's no I before the E at the end, so it's not Reese's. There's no Y either. So I absolutely agree with you, and the vitriol
there's an apostrophe,
is warranted.
For God's sakes, there's an apostrophe. It's possessive. They are his peanut butter cups. It's a dude named Reese. They're his peanut butter cups. Nobody's named Reese's.
No.
I mean,
no.
I'm on an island here, I guess. No, I'm only teasing. I'm just ready to take any contrarian stand right now, no matter what you guys say. I'm like, I never knew what they were called, but now I like Reese's Pieces.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
All right.
I'm gonna come down.
Whatever I can do to
I'm gonna unleash all the spiders.
Yeah. Touching nerves already. We like it. The Dynasty Underground is rolling. Of course, follow us at The Undroppables on social media and find us on The Undroppables YouTube channel. Of course, we're on your favorite audio platforms as well, but love if you check out that YouTube channel. You might see some new stuff over there if you go have a look, and I will talk about that in a little bit here. But all the other sweet nothings can be found in the episode description. I'm not going to waste too much time here because we are going to be talking about some reflections from last week's Senior Bowl, gentlemen. There was a lot that happened, lots of really good content out on the socials, including from one Biggs over on the Dynasty Pulse was in Mobile as well. So been some good stuff popping, but we're going to start. I mentioned it in the pre-opening, guys. We got some surprising news, and I think it was just yesterday, Monday. We are recording this on Tuesday night. Cooper Kupp made a post on social media that he was informed by the Rams that they are going to be trading him this offseason, basically no matter what. I was very surprised by this news. As recently as last week, we talked about the Rams offense, and I was operating as if they were going into 2025 with Cooper Kupp on the roster alongside Puka Nacua, but that is not going to be the case now, fellas. And so there's been a bunch of buzz about this. Lots of people talking landing spots and things. I'm not going to talk about that just yet. I'm going to start with you, actually, Jax. And I just want to see, until you see a landing spot, so pre-landing spot, does this do anything for you as far as Cooper Kupp's dynasty ranking or dynasty value? Or are you kind of holding fast until you see where he lands? And what do you think he maybe brings to a team that gets him?
Well, I think it's a great sell window for sure because, he was really bad in the playoffs, fantasy playoffs, that is, and the regular playoffs. Yeah, he was kind of bad down the stretch. Didn't really do much for us. I think was it the semis or the week before the semis, whatever week it was, he absolutely laid an egg when everybody thought he was going to go off. Great
Yes.
matchup. I can't remember the week
I believe I beat you in the playoffs that
because of
week
that
because Cup did absolutely nothing. If I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken, that was
in Omega.
week 15 in Omega. Yes.
Yeah,
And it was
exactly.
glorious because it was on Thursday, so I knew I was going to win the whole week.
Yeah, exactly. That was a rough week. I mean, goose egged or whatever he did. So yeah, I mean, it's been pretty rough, and a lot of that was a precipitous decline for him. Um, and that's his boy Stafford and everything. So like, it's not like you can really blame very much of any. He wasn't hurt, like. So I think maybe it's kind of run its course there. Well, obviously it's run its course, but I mean, whether or not he's able to put it back together someplace else, I mean, I think rejuvenation is probably the best thing for Cooper Kupp, but we don't even know if that's actually going to be rejuvenated. We just know that he's going to apparently go somewhere else, which I think is a great sell window for Cooper Kupp. Maybe the buy window has passed. I think that was probably, just behind us. Now, maybe it's a good little buy window. I mean, as soon as it's announced, his value will spike.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually do think there was some lingering injury stuff that might have hampered him a little bit. He always has something nagging, and so I do wonder about that. We have seen him at full health. And I think for me, as somebody who might be a bit of a Cooper Kupp truther, I think what this allows us to do is to actually set some new realistic expectations for him. I always talk about the realistic expectations. I think expectations for Cooper Kupp have been unrealistic since he had that monster season. And so we've just been left feeling disappointed by him. And I think we've maybe not wanted to set those new expectations in LA because we think he can still have what he did that big season. But I think now, seeing a new team, seeing the Rams move on from him, I think this can make us say, okay, he's going to be a good wide receiver too for a team. Hopefully that's where he lands. Hopefully a team's not relying on him as the one. And then we can maybe slot him in as the 3 hopeful 2 for our dynasty rosters. But yeah, we should be looking at moving on from him anyway as a guy who's older and seen a lot of injuries. But Joe, what are you thinking about Cooper Kupp? Do you still believe like I do, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think he's always an injury risk, but even to start this season, he was kind of breaking the mold in terms of like fantasy points over expected. As I recall, those first few weeks of the season, he was looking like exactly the guy you wanted. Then the injuries started. Then Puka was out, so he was getting heavily targeted. They were both out at the same time, and then he got he got injured again. He got banged up, and he started to tail off, to Jax's earlier point. So I think in a new setting, he could be good for a while, but he's always going to be that injury risk. But I don't know. I'm excited about him. I want the Raiders to get him, put it that way.
I mean, is he better? Here's the thing: like, if you just pop open his stats for his career, and like, there's one thing that doesn't, look like the rest, and it's the 230 target, 178 catch season that, I mean, his catches 70, 40, 94, 96, 75, 64, 73, and 178. Like, it's not like he's ever even caught 100 balls before.
First half of the next season, though, he was still crushing it, was
I
he
know.
not? And then he
Yes,
got
yes,
hurt.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like he's not good. I'm just saying like if you stack up, take yards per route run, it's like 1.99, 2.26, 2.08, 1.95, 2.40 was that season that you're talking about, 177 and 188. That one season he did was 3.12. Like, so everything was right around 2.1 ish, and then just totally goes off the charts. So I think everything from that season is more the outlier than is his career. So yeah, I think we've seen it all, and he's just sort of he is what he is at this point, and that'd be lucky if you get that, I think, is my point.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think for me, what's so enticing is some of the other stuff, like the yards after the catch. Like that's his profile. I'm not expecting him to be this kind of downfield mossing guys. But
No.
if you look at those seasons, Jax, those 3 seasons where he had those bigger stat profiles were the seasons where he got 90 or more targets. So I don't think he necessarily 90 or more receptions, 130, 126, and then 230 targets. So I
Yeah.
don't think he needs to have 230, right? I think
No.
if we get him in that 120 to 140 range, but again, is a team going to rely on him as the aging veteran with those injuries that have stacked up? It remains to be
That's
seen. I
right.
think if he did go to the Raiders, that would be very interesting because I think him and Brock Bowers kind of cannibalize some of the same stuff that they do. But I think Brock Bowers is probably just way more versatile and athletic at this point. But very, very curious to see where he goes because I think the skill set is still there, judging by early in the season, like what Joe said. But I think, guys, the biggest piece to come out of this is the Puka Nakua analysis. Do we think this makes a big spike for Puka Nakua? Do we think that they are going to be attacking the high end of the market, either free agency or the draft? Or would you be rising Puka Nakua in your dynasty rankings? I'm not there yet. I'm kind of holding fast to see what they do because I already have Puka very high in my dynasty rankings, but I know you guys have him higher. So what's your kind of stance on this one here?
I mean, can't get much higher. I mean, he's what, a top 5 or 6, dynasty wide receiver. I think that's where he is. And, you know, his yards per route run from his college days has extended to the NFL. He actually had better yards per route run this past year than, Cooper Kupp did in his, Triple Crown season. So just goes to show you exactly the type of player that Puka is. So he's 2 years in. If he can avoid injuries, which is obviously a slight concern for the way he plays, I mean, wheels up for Puka, but they've always been wheels up. Look, I think they're going to backfill to some degree. I mean, you're talking about Kupp going to Vegas. Is he actually Kupp? That is he actually better? A 32-year-old Cooper Kupp better than Jacoby Myers is right now? Maybe. I think he's in that vein. So, I mean, I don't know that, I'd love to see the Patriots get him too, but I just don't think that 100 targets was probably what we can expect from Kupp. And of course, Puka is just the alpha predator. I mean, as long as Stafford's there too, my God, wheels are all the way up.
Yeah. And the only reason I said Vegas is I'm thinking staying close to home, maybe
Sure.
continuing living in LA with his family. I mean, the Chargers is obviously another option, but then you've got, the Lad McConkey redundancy with
Yep.
the Raiders. Trav, you mentioned Brock Bowers, but I was actually thinking more he's a Jacoby Myers analog.
Yeah.
So, they're probably not the most likely landing spots. Not only that, but he probably, wants to win more championships at this point. He's not going to come play for us. This is a pipe dream.
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
he actually he said that in his post too
I
that he's
saw it.
gonna wants to. Sorry, sorry, not trying to drive that nail a little deeper or anything there, Joe. But
Yeah, it's not us. I get it.
I get it.
I think it was Ian Hartitz had posted it. I really like it because as I was going through the teams, he was mentioning he would look good in a slot Z role for the Texans. And I don't disagree. You could have Tank Dell, Nico Collins and Cooper Kupp. That's a nice little trio. And I don't think you'll have to pay Kupp very much to be there. So yeah, that may be a great fit.
Yeah, he's gonna go somewhere with the quarterback. Texans, maybe Bengals.
Bengals,
Someone who's got a good QB to get him the ball and appreciate
Atlanta,
and
sneaky.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
Thank
stuff.
you.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting to see where he lands, and I think the Rams are going to be a
Cowboys.
player.
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah.
You have to always sorry. Go on. I
Yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt you.
Cowboys are eternally linked to every skill player that comes to
Exactly.
mind.
Where's he from? What's his childhood favorite team? That's what I would do if I was him. He's already won a Super Bowl, Super Bowl
don't even
MVP. Might as well just go live your dream somewhere, right?
Yep. I love
No
that.
doubt. No doubt. Yeah, I think the Rams, what I was just going to say, the last point there is if they do dip into the draft as far as getting one of these wide receivers, I know last week I mentioned that I thought there was some uncertainty around their organizational future, but I think if they have 2 stud wide receivers and then they were to drop a rookie wide receiver contract into that organization, they've immediately flipped my silly narrative on its head. So I think there actually could be this could be a really good move to set them up for the future, depending on how they backfill that position.
The timing is very interesting because the Rams very famously identified Puka Nakua as a target following the Senior Bowl. And Cooper
Right.
Kupp's tweet came out right after the Senior Bowl. So maybe they saw someone they liked.
You
So-
never know. Why don't we go ahead, Jax?
So Kupp is from Washington. Went to school in
Hmm.
Washington.
I was thinking Seahawks. I really was.
I know. Maybe he's the Tyler Lockett replacement, and it's JSN, Kupp, and DK.
So his value
Interdivisional?
is tanked, completely tanked, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yes, interdivisional. He can't go there though.
Oh, that'd be so greasy. Yeah, I
Yeah, they
hope he
can't
does
do it.
not do that.
They
I
can't
hope he
do it.
doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
All right,
Joe,
moving
you
on.
mentioned it. We are going to talk a little bit about some Senior Bowl risers and fallers. It was it's always a
You
fun
like that
time of year.
assist, by the way? I'm getting good at this podcasting thing. I teed it up for you. And then I
Absolutely.
talked
You
about
want to
it, which
take
is
the
always
reins
great.
here, or
No.
you
I
want to take
just
over there?
wanted to
No, I like that. I thought it was perfect, but then Jax had to slide back in with something to ruin your flow there. So
Sorry about that.
it's okay. Okay. We love you,
I'm
and
glad
we know that if go ahead.
I'm glad we know where Cooper Kupp's from now. I think I did know that, but anyways, good to know.
100%. I was gonna say, and we know that if we're ever threatened by any eight-eyed monsters, that Jax is gonna come and take care of that for us. Love that. I honestly wish the people could see the hilarity that ensued during that, but maybe one day we will release a little bit of footage. But the Senior Bowl, like I said, guys, it's always a fun time of year, and for me, honestly, it kind of triggers my rookie process. Oftentimes at this time of year, especially right now, I've been doing some quote unquote dishwashing for the undroppables with some brand improvements that we've got coming and some things that we want to bring for the people. So stay tuned for all of that, because there are a lot of kind of back channel discussions happening on some things we can do to add value for the listeners, the viewers, the followers of the undroppables. So stay tuned with us. But yeah, so in that dishwashing, I've just kind of started my rookie process, and I'm liking what I'm seeing in this class, and I'm liking a lot of what I saw from the Senior Bowl content this week. And first, I want to kind of pose a question for you guys as to what we look for at the Senior Bowl, because these guys are in completely new situations with new teammates, new coaches. For quarterbacks, it's new pass catchers, new offensive lines, all of that stuff, new blocking schemes for running backs, new routes for wide receivers. And so a lot of how do they handle that, things like that. It's really cool to see how these guys do. You hear a lot of those stories about the intangibles, guys who are leaders, who you can only hear that stuff from the media. You're not really reading that necessarily or seeing it from the clips. So I love the minutia that we get from some of these guys that are at the Senior Bowl. And I think in the last couple of years, we've seen a huge influx of fantasy football analysts and brands being credentialed for the Senior Bowl. So it's been really cool to see. And that stuff is kind of a direct line to us and our timelines. So we really, really like that. But Joe, I know you're always dialed into the Senior Bowl. I know you had a busy couple of weeks on the life end, so maybe not as dialed as you would like to be on the Senior Bowl, but life interrupts from time to time. But what are you looking to take away from the Senior Bowl when you start to dive into your process?
Well, I think there's a couple things just to take into consideration when you're analyzing the Senior Bowl. At each position group, there's a little something different, right? For quarterbacks, it's not a week where they're really set up to succeed. They've got new terminology, they've got no chemistry with the wide receivers, so they're really set up to look bad. Think about like Bo Nix and Michael Penix last year, right? Everybody walked away thinking they looked terrible. And they both acquitted themselves really well in their rookie years. Running backs, there's not really live tackling, right? So what does that set up for? The big backs aren't going to get a chance to shine except for in the game itself. And so much of the analysis is based on the practices. And so if there isn't real tackling, then there's not real tackle breaking. And so, we had a couple guys that were 215, 220, 230 that did not get to showcase what they can really do versus, the half tackling that's going on. Wide receivers. Wait, back to running backs real quick. The one thing that does sort of stand out is the guys who are good at pass catching, because they do these one-on-one drills. And so you see them lined up against linebackers. Sometimes you see them lined up against safeties. And so the pass catching running backs tend to get more of the hype than the bigger backs do that maybe aren't as refined pass catchers. It's really set up for wide receivers and tight ends to shine because of those one-on-one drills and just because of the throws that are taking place. And so what I really like to see from wide receivers is 3 good days, 3 dominant days. And if they're not good on day one, then they better be good on day 2 and day 3 and in the game. And then tight ends, sort of the same deal. There's obviously a blocking component that real life teams are worried about. And then, outside of just our skill position groups, the other thing I'm looking at are the no-shows or the early departures, because they're either leaving early because they got a tip that they're going to get drafted around where they hope to be and they're not really going to increase their value much more, or they don't show up because their value is already high enough from the time that they accepted their Senior Bowl invite to the point that they don't need to show up and it's not going to benefit them in any way. So those are kind of the big takeaways that we're looking for from the Senior Bowl. Some stuff on the field, most of it in practice, and a little bit during the game.
Got any of those names, by the way, Joe, on guys that notably didn't show up? Didn't necessarily have that on the show sheet there, but if you got any on the list, I'd love for you to fire them in there.
Yeah. The big one, I think, is Alec A. Maynor. He's a wide receiver from Stanford. He has the best way I can describe him is he's kind of like what's the wide receiver, Arizona wide receiver, Michael. Why am I blanking?
Wilson.
Michael Wilson. He's got sort of a Michael Wilson build. The comp is kind of Michael Wilson on steroids, can kind of do it all. Has a couple of very big games on tape. Notably a big catch against Travis Hunter. And just every time it was a big game or he was in a big matchup, he was mossing guys out there, right? So he was one that accepted his invitation and no-showed, probably because he got a pretty good indication from his agent or teams that he's going to be a first-round pick or early second-round pick. So that's one. The other is Cam Scatabo. And I laugh about this one because I'm convinced this guy's just working on his 40 time, right? He's kind of showed some stuff on film that a lot of teams are going to like. For a big guy, he's a good pass catcher already.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest question about him is how fast is he? What's his speed score going to be? And I think he knows that. And I don't think he's that fast. So I bet you he's just been running 40s the whole time. And then at the tight end position, Gunnar Helm. I was kind of bummed about this one because I had Gunnar Helm in my Campus to Canton league, and he was like a godsend to my team. And just I wasn't expecting him to be nearly as good as he was. Obviously, at Texas, he was behind Jatavian Sanders, and just showed up this year and became, one of their most trusted targets. So he was kind of a monster. He, apparently was nursing a shoulder injury that he had during the season, which really didn't show up that much during the season, truth be told. But that was more or less his story. So I don't know if that's just a cover story and he just felt like there wasn't much to be gained. But those are kind of the big ones from each skill position outside of QB. Will Howard didn't show up either. I don't really care about Will Howard.
Yeah. Jax, how about you? Are there any specific takeaways that you're looking to get out of Senior Bowl? I know that you got some real good shows lined up. You've been in the lab pretty much all day today. What are you bringing away from the Senior Bowl?
Well, that's kind of it, right? I mean, I wasn't there, so I've got to take other people's, feedback as, the information, right? So yeah, we had a great show today. The Undrafted was with Thor Nystrom, so that was great. Don't miss that one. He's awesome. And for us, it's like, it's funny because I even asked Thor on a couple of occasions with certain prospects. It's like, this guy's good. He's doing this, that, and the other. I was like, is he good? Like he's a good player. He's going to get drafted, and that's what's good about him, or is he good that he's good and he's going to actually score fantasy points for our team? And I think that's what's important. I think a lot of guys, will watch the Senior Bowl, get the information. Now all of them. I know all the wide receivers. It doesn't mean they're all going to be good. As a matter of fact, maybe one or two will be fantasy worthy in this from this class of Senior Bowl wide receivers. Oftentimes we don't see them because, Tet McMillan wasn't there. Travis Hunter wasn't there. Trey Harris wasn't there. Emeka Egbuka wasn't there. It's not like all the top guys are there. So, once you get past the first 5 or 6, wide receivers in any draft, you're kind of picking thin to find actual, fantasy relevant contributors. So, sometimes you got to take all this with a grain of salt. Yeah, I like this guy a little bit better than that. You're looking for the Tank Dell, the Puka Nacua, the Lad McConkey, the Debo Samuel to really step up. That guy probably didn't happen this week. And maybe there isn't one in this group. It doesn't mean there isn't, but maybe there isn't. And so you have to think those possibilities through, that maybe there's just not a wide receiver at this Senior Bowl that's actually going to be that meaningful for fantasy. There's a couple guys I like, a couple guys afforded themselves really well. Lord knows I love Jalen Royals. He's pretty cool, but he was at 80%, according to himself and others who watched him. So we don't really know. Tez Johnson was good. There's the Jaylen Noel was really good. He might be a player. He actually could be a player. So maybe there's one or two here. Obviously Bech gets the game-winning catch. That shit's cool. I guess his brother was killed in the New Orleans thing. So just, gets a game winner, whatever. I mean, that's super fucking cool. But there you go. I think really the highlight of this group was the running backs. And as Joe says, we don't get a real good look at every facet of what they can and can't do, because there's so much down and dirty with a running back, and they're not getting down and dirty, right? There's no tackling. Excuse me. So it's really the pass catchers. That's why Brashard is the one that sort of Brashard Smith's the one that sort of steps up and looks great. 194-pound former wide receiver as a running back. Of course he's going to look good. So whether or not he actually carries that forward and becomes a meaningful running back at the next level still remains to be seen, even though he looks so good in these drills. So yeah, that's some of the thing. I think the quarterbacks, you're right. We look at Jaxson Dart and Jalen Milroe. A lot of it was how they handle themselves, how they handle some of that adversity, just some of the way they communicate, the way they prepare, all those things. I don't think there's too much we can take away. I mean, if they fall flat on their face and they just don't have an NFL arm or something like that, obviously you could demerit them. I think both Milroe and Jaxson Dart are kind of those, quarterback 3 and 4. So we're going to find out if they can actually, be worthwhile of a 1-2 turn pick in a super flex draft. And I don't think today or the Senior Bowl actually does that for us necessarily,
Yeah, definitely important for our listeners to remember that it is a very small sample size of players at the Senior Bowl. So what looks good amongst the group of Senior Bowl players might not always be good amongst the entire draft class. Good points there, Jax. But it is a good time for some of these guys to get steamed up into our fantasy hearts. There's always one or two, and we are going to talk about one that has already taken up residence in Jax's heart, I believe. And I know, Joe, you are liking him as well. He was the belle of the quarterback ball at the Senior Bowl. This might be a guy where we do want to take a look at the other players around him, but I don't think that's going to stop us from being full steam ahead on Jaxson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback. 3-year starter, increase his statistics every year after year at Ole Miss. You really like to see that. And he proceeded to throw darts at the Senior Bowl. He was commanding the field. I was just kind of listening to some podcasts here or there. I heard that he was a great leader on the field, keeping those guys organized in the game and in the practices and stuff. And he definitely sold himself well to NFL teams. Jax, I want to start with you. I would love for you to keep your pants on for this. I know you like Jaxson Dart, so I'm going to pass it to you to talk about Jaxson so you can Jax off.
Jax Dart. Yeah, I think what's funny is like this happens every time with certain players. Like, the buzz was that he was a second round, maybe a third round draft pick in the NFL draft. I'm like, the hell are you talking about? This is a good quarterback. I thought, I'm like, by the stats and by the, playing a high level of competition, he's winning some big games in a big conference. Like, okay, that's pretty good as far as I'm told. And then, of course, all the people saying that he plays in a gimmicky offense. Well, that may be true, but he's doing a good job with that offense. And then I saw, Jay Wood, FF Coder, our boy who helps me with the wide receiver model. He has a quarterback model that, he kind of keeps to himself a little bit. We look at it together. We might push that one out there too, but ultimately that quarterback model is historically pretty good. And Jaxson Dart pretty good in that model. And I'm like, oh, maybe he is good. And so now I'm like, pushing him. And then I hear, I had Thor on the program today, and he said that it's very likely that Jaxson Dart, all three of these quarterbacks, Dart, Shador, and Cam Ward, go in the top 10. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, now, I'm not that high on him. If that's where he goes, then that's kind of what I thought. I was like, yeah, he should be a top 15 pick. So if that's where he ends up going, I won't be like so high on him at that point. I will be he'll be in in competition for my quarterback 2 in this class for sure. But I'm not sure past that. I'm not like, oh, he's definitely going to be a stud. This is a down quarterback class. And in the down quarterback class, I thought Jaxson Dart certainly belonged amongst these other 2 guys and other 3 guys. We want to throw Milroe in there as potentially the best quarterback in this class. That's all I felt. And I still feel that way. And if they're going to draft him in the top 10, and that's about where I'm at with him too.
Yep. I think that would be sweet validation. How about yourself, Joe? I know that you are liking everything you have seen from the Super Bowl or the Senior Bowl. Sorry, as you can see, I got the Super Bowl. Maybe
Not
on
yet,
my mind.
baby. Not yet. Maybe next year.
Maybe we'll talk a little Super Bowl at the end of the show. We shall see. But I don't want to have to jack off myself. So yeah, let me know what you think about Jaxson Dart there, Joe.
Well,
I'm excited too.
Off the top, I was saying how hard it is for a quarterback to look good at the Senior Bowl and how none of them looked good last year. But word on the street was Jaxson Dart looked good. He had a rough day 1, mostly because at Ole Miss, he was operating out of the pistol and out of shotgun a lot, and he was not under center quite as often, right? So he had a rough day 1, but really started picking it up in day 2 and day 3 and acquitted himself very well during the game. I think the things that I liked hearing was basically, I saw some clips, right? Some crossbody throws, some tight window throws, a very nice seam throw on a flea flicker in the game after a defender had turned his back and he just threw a jump ball to Bech, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main thing is that within the structure and within the confines of this Senior Bowl setup, he was pushing the ball downfield. That's what we want to see, right? We want to see guys that are willing to push the ball downfield within structure. So he was not trigger shy, and that seems like a good sign to me. Maybe a little bit of a gunslinger, but new type of offense, lining up under center when he's not really used to that, new set of receivers, and he was not afraid. Even if this guy's a lifelong QB2, when he comes into the game, if he's willing to push the ball down the field, we're going to be interested. So this guy's showing me everything I want to see. I share Jax's sentiment that I'm pretty excited about him and his progression throughout, statistically throughout his college career. I definitely want to watch more. Quarterback's notoriously the hardest position to analyze.
For sure.
But one thing you can see right away is moxie and a willingness to, put it all out there. And that's often a good sign. Worst case, we got a Jameis.
He's got a little bit of swagger.
100%.
He's got a little maybe Jameis. I mean, I don't, his interception percentage fell every year that he was the quarterback. His yards per attempt, I don't know. I looked at this. This was crazy. Let me give you this. You'll love this. His yards per attempt year over year. So his freshman year, his yards per attempt, 7.1, then 8.2, then 9.3, then 10.7. Like all the while, his interception rate is falling, right? So, look, what do we want to see? What about Jayden Daniels? What about Bo Nix? These guys got better and better and better. And so I think Jaxson Dart was that same thing. Like I thought last year he had some, maybe a case to be drafted, he played pretty well. But this year he was just that much better. 29 touchdowns, only 6 picks. Yeah, there was a lot of gimmicky stuff, I guess. But if it's so fucking gimmicky, pardon me, but why doesn't everybody run this gimmicky stuff? If it's so easy to just be like, well, everybody's always open, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes at some point, I get that there's some gimmicky stuff, but you still got to make plays, and so they're able to make these plays. So somebody's got to be good there. And it's like the same thing we heard about Patrick Mahomes, all this air raid offense, and he's never going to be anything. I'm not saying this kid's Patrick Mahomes, but the NFL draft industrial complex, missed on Mahomes as he went 10th or 11th in that draft. So, hey, who knows? Maybe we're doing the same thing here. I don't know. I just think that he's got some big traits, and I'm willing to draft that, especially right now where he's going in. If this is a damn dynasty show, he's going at the 1-2 turn sometimes. Like I got him in a mock draft on the Sonic Truth, I think at the 112, 111, something like that. I mean, if you're picking a quarterback that might be drafted in the top 10 right now in the real draft, outside of the top 10 of your dynasty superflex draft, that's crazy. So yeah, absolutely all in at that value.
Yeah. Just to piggyback a little bit, just traits we like, right? So PFF Excuse me. Football Insights put this out today, which I thought was really interesting. Of the quarterbacks drafted in 23 and 24, so the last 2 years, their final season when blitzed, Jaxson Dart per PFF, 92.8 grade. That is higher than Jayden Daniels. That's higher than Bo Nix. That is number one of the last 2 years. His yards per attempt when blitz, 12.4. This is a good sign. What are we looking for? We're looking for poise. We're looking for moxie. Not only that, but he put up good numbers as a rusher. I wouldn't say he's like a burner by any means, but he's this tactical scrambler that we're looking for. So from a fantasy standpoint, we like guys that force it downfield and that will run. From a real life standpoint, we like guys that can adjust, that'll push the ball downfield, and that are not phased when they're blitz. He seems to
your
be checking all
point,
these
Joe.
boxes.
To your point, Joe, on that rushing, one of the data points in the anatomy series is quarterback's college best season rushing yards, right? So just best season rushing yards. And he is, if you take Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jayden Daniels, that whole list, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, Herbert, Drake May, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Jordan Love, he is only behind of those players, Lamar, Jayden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts, who had like 1,200 each. But after that, he's only behind Drake May at 698. And then he's next at 614, ahead of Josh Allen, ahead of Mahomes, ahead of Burrow, ahead of Herbert, obviously, and even Caleb and Bo Nix, who had 510. He had 614 rush yards in his best season. Pretty damn good for Jaxson Dart. The interception rate was a little bit high, as you say, the gunslinger thing that did sort of correct itself. But I use career number there. I don't like to try and cherry pick the interception rate. That's just the way I like to look at it. So his touchdown to interception rate also a little bit low compared to some of those guys, but I don't know, man. He's got a shot. I mean, he's eerily similar to Patrick Mahomes in touchdown to interception rate. Look, he's in there. He's not as prolific as Mahomes was. I mean, Mahomes threw for 5,000 yards and 53 touchdowns. So, he fell short of that, obviously, with 32 total touchdowns and 4,200 yards. So not quite as prolific, but just absolutely can put it all together. Had a huge yards per attempt. Let's go, Jaxson Dart.
May I just suggest, we've just hit the listeners with just tons of stats, very nerdy, and I love it. However, I'm going to suggest that we implement Occam's razor here, right? The simplest explanation.
His name is awesome.
The simplest explanation is the best. And Jax, you just nailed it. He's got the best
Dart.
fucking name ever. Yeah. Come on, guys. Don't overthink it. His name's Jaxson Dart.
Yeah, that's actually the take.
I like it.
Let's move on. I
like it. No, yeah. I love a good gun.
Cut all the nerdy shit. Let's go.
Cut all the nerdy shit and just be like, dude's name is Dart, bro.
What nerdy shit? What nerdy shit? Right?
Dude's name is Dart, bro. Let's just fucking move on.
Yeah, dude's name is Dart. I can't wait to find a good pun on hacking darts. That's what we call smoking cigarettes up here in Canada. You hacking darts,
ripping darts.
Yeah, I like a good gunslinger, and honestly, let's just get him on the Kuvatakas fuck around and find out scale, and let's fucking find out, boys. Let's find out. Like, what if he's like
around?
What if he's like long-term starter Gardner Minshew plus?
Yep,
we're happy with that.
I would put him right in the middle of the chart right now. We'll see which way he goes.
That's exactly right. Totally. By the way, the Gardner Minshew is very, very apropos. That's right.
It's not far off, right? Nope. That's kind of what I'm seeing. But yeah, I think the plus.
Imagine Gardner Minshew, right? But good,
right?
Exactly. That's the plus. That's the
like
plus.
Baker Mayfield.
And that's why he can. Yeah, I like that too. I like that. Yep. Okay, boys, how do we want to do this? Do we want to keep going through quarterback position and talk about a loser, or do we want to keep going through some winners through some other positions?
Winners.
I
agree.
We like
winners.
We like to win.
Yeah, we're talking to winners.
You actually mentioned this running back off the rip there, and I liked what I saw from Brashard Smith when I looked at the data profile. So just to be clear, I haven't done a whole lot of tape study on these guys. Like I said, there was a bunch of dishes to be washed with the undroppables. But all good dishes to be washed, of course. But this data profile to me kind of reminded me of like Tyrone Tracy on steroids, which is fitting because he is a converted wide receiver. Brashard Smith, 3 years at Miami and then converted over to SMU. After 20 career carries as a wide receiver, they gave him 232 this past season. So Brashard Smith is looking like he could be a bit of a dark horse guy, one of those guys we might be able to get a little bit later in drafts that gives us some good running back value. But where he popped was kind of one of those spots that you mentioned, Joe, and that was in some of those receiving drills, making some really nice catches in the one-on-ones. What's your take on Brashard Smith? Do you think we actually could have another Tyrone Tracy, or should we temper those expectations because catching a Tyrone Tracy in a bottle is a bit of a unicorn?
Well, I think my first take is I don't have Tracy's weight in front of me, but Brashard Smith's 195. And I know a couple episodes ago we said we're not going to just discount guys that are 195 pounds anymore. So I'm trying really hard not to do that. But from a physical comp, he's not the same.
Right.
The Tyrone Tracy comps were flying all week, though. It's hard not to. A wide receiver that converted to running back. You know, he led SMU to the college football playoffs, right? He was kind of like the heart and soul of that offense. He's probably a day 2 pick. I want to see more at the combine, and that's going to be the case with so many of these running backs. Is I want to see them at the combine, and I want to see kind of how they measure athletically. That's not a deal breaker one way or another. We're obviously interested in guys that catch passes, but as you know, we talked about off the top, the running backs that catch passes are going to look really good at the Senior Bowl on those one-on-one drills, and a running back converted from wide receiver is especially going to look really good. So I want to believe, but I really need to see more. And but he was far and away, no doubt, like the winner of the Senior Bowl from the running back group. I want to be clear about that, and that's usually very good signal, but I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I think he profiles in the Bucky Irving, James Cook phylum. You know, Tajay Spears maybe is a little reminiscent a couple years ago when he was able to break people off in the pass game with some nifty moves. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I think I said it, you know, this kid goes out there, he's a converted wide receiver, and he's running wide receiver drills at the running back position. Yeah, looks pretty good. I'm not so sure. When you talk about the James Cook, Bucky Irving, comps of the world, you have to remember there are probably 200 failed comps like that we go back and just Tyler Beatty and this, that, and the other. I mean, just a million other running backs who, sort of gave us some Brashard Smith, excitement somewhere along the way that just never panned out. So, I'm not so sure. Like you say, I mean, converted, wide receiver, SMU, not a big school, small body. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. But yeah, he's really exciting in the pass game, and maybe that's just where he makes his hay. But like I said, there's been a million of these types of players, and in a loaded class, it's kind of tough for him because, I mean, are you really going to take Brashard Smith over, maybe 10 of these running backs that really have, pretty good pedigree? Look, maybe if the team that's drafting him is drafting him with purpose, hey, we want a weapon out of the backfield. We want, our very own, not to say that he is, but our own Jahmyr Gibbs type player where we've got some speed and electricity as a B space back, and if he's drafted with that in mind, hey, he could be pretty successful in that role. I just wouldn't foresee him getting, I mean, look, even James Cook is mystifying us, right? That he's able to do this. I mean, certainly mystifying me. I didn't think he had this in him. He never did this, at any level before. So, it is kind of an outlier to see players like that do that. And I don't think Brashard Smith will, but he could have some utility. And, look, if he's more than that, I'll be wrong, but I'm just hesitant. That's all.
Yeah. My first read is more lightning than bell cow. Right. That's my note to myself. I think that hopefully that makes sense to other people.
100%. Yeah. Basically, you're hoping he can be like an elite handcuff with a little bit of pass catching standalone value. But I think kind of to your point, Jax, where you're not going to be taking him over any of the other guys. I think the hope is that he doesn't get draft capital enough where you need to make that decision, right? The hope is that all those guys are well.
Who's the guy we like at Denver?
Blake Watson.
Blake Watson, right? Blake Watson
or estimate.
Dope.
Watson.
Blake Watson. He's like a Blake Watson. What about Kenny Gainwell? Like, there's a lot of these guys that basically just never quite get there. He's more likely Kenny Gainwell or Blake Watson than he is James Cook or Bucky Irving. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
ultimately, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's probably what we've got here. And that's still pretty good. Like, Kenny Gainwell's still got a job. You know what I mean? Like, he's an injury away. Don't mean to jinx anything, but from being a pretty important player real quick. I should have done that. I was wrong. I'm so sorry.
Tell
Trav.
that to Will Shipley, and I'm
didn't
going to
mean to do
choose
that.
not to acknowledge
I didn't
your
mean to do
comment
that. That's not right.
in
I
this
shouldn't have done that.
in this the Lord's week, Jax.
So sorry. So
Wow.
wrong. That was
not
mean.
this Sunday, Trav. Not
That was
this
mean.
Sunday.
That was mean.
Next season, he means
I'll
maybe.
be at church this Sunday. I'll
I'm
tell
so
you that much.
sorry.
Wait, real quick, if we could, Trav, I want to hijack the show a little bit because
Please.
Jax was throwing James Cook comps around for Brashard Smith, and that's obviously the wrong guy to use the James Cook comp for. The guy the James Cook comp goes to is obviously Trevor Etienne because
Younger
he
brother.
went to Georgia.
Yeah.
He was a third down back, and he has an older brother in the NFL. So
Yeah.
that's who I was holding the James Cook comp for. Now, granted, I don't think he's going to beat James Cook, but I thought he was kind of interesting and one of the winners as well. But, it's easy to say he was one of the winners because, again, a great route runner, consistently winning in these one-on-ones. There were some great clips of him making mid-air adjustments to some of these balls. And, I saw a couple running plays where I was like, okay, all right, like finding the edge on a sweep, something like that. I could squint and see it. Obviously, the pedigree, obviously the, college program that has produced many running backs. So I don't think we need to talk too much about Trevor Etienne. When you said James Cook, that's where my mind went.
Oh, I always kind of try and attach a little bit to those big schools with that big running back history, and Georgia's is obviously one of them. There's just got to be some pedigree and kind of different culture around there. Yeah, and I have to be honest, I'm a sucker for a little bit of NFL nepotism. You know what I mean? Like, I am down to tap in to a little bit of that because some of that athletic profile could transfer over, right? So I'm always down, especially if it's a little bit cheaper, right? Or if you can get a little bit free. I'll take up a deep dynasty spot for one of those dudes. Absolutely. I'm trying to think of a name.
Like when the Cowboys drafted Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah,
because his dad was like the special teams coach or something.
Yeah, I definitely have some of those guys littered on some of my dynasty rosters who have no business being there, but that's okay.
Other winners, though, real quick at the running back position. I thought, while we're at running back, because we'll probably move off and get to the exciting pass catchers. But Ollie Gordon, had a down year this year on a team that struggled, and of course he was lightning in a bottle last year, and shows up at 6'1", 233. Looks like he's got pretty good feet. Plays pretty well in the game. Didn't he throw a touchdown pass or something like that? I think he did.
He sure did.
Yeah.
Actually, he was not the only running back who threw a touchdown pass in the game. RJ Harvey also threw one, which is, a bad look for the quarterbacks. But anyways,
yeah, crazy. But so I think Ollie, looked pretty good. And, I didn't hear that Devin Neal was a winner, but he wasn't a loser, and he's so good that I think he's going to be a winner. Like, I just think he's going to be good. He's currently my RB6. I feel really good about that. Him and Ollie Gordon are my RB6 and 7. You can flip them around however you want, but I think these two guys are going to get drafted, on day 2, and could very well be lead backs wherever they go. I mean, Ollie Gordon's a hell of a pass blocker, and definitely a good receiver, like in at least good enough functionally. For sure. Devin Neal is just an all-around great player, so I think he's going to have a chance to lead a backfield, quite frankly. I mean, at worst, he's Ray Davis with a RB2 role on a team somewhere. So I love both those guys, and they were both pretty good here at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I have the same notes, and again, obviously I wasn't there, and so I'm just going off of what I can glean online, watching YouTube, watching Twitter, and I think the hype thing is really real, and maybe that's something I should have mentioned off the top, but like when people are really hyping guys up, you should probably make note of it. And Devin Neal, I think everybody going into it wanted to talk about him a lot, and then he didn't do a whole lot. But again, I don't know if this really suited his skill set. Other guys on that list are Damian Martinez, Woody Marks and Jarquez Hunter, who I like wanted to hear more about. I wanted like glowing reports and didn't really get them. But anyways, that's kind of it in terms of the running backs. I'd say of those guys, Damian Martinez is the one that interests me the most, just because I heard he's kind of like everything you want Trey Benson to be, but better. And we didn't really get that enough information out of the Senior Bowl. So I can't wait for the combine for him.
Totally. I want to flip back to Ollie Gordon here real quick, because I put out a good tweet on the True North airwaves, or the Twitter account at least. There was only 3 running backs since 2000 as sophomores that have run for 1,700 yards and had 30 receptions. Christian McCaffrey's one of them. Kadeem Carey is the other, and Ollie Gordon is the other. So only 3 guys have done that since 2000, and Ollie Gordon was one of them. So you talked about the hype.
Carey air. Yeah.
Well,
That's
yeah,
a
but he's
name
also
I haven't
in
heard
Christian
in
McCaffrey
years.
air,
Wow.
and it's a rare thing. And
Yes.
I love what you were saying about the hype for Devin Neal, because I like Devin Neal as well. I think he can easily be at worst like the 60 in a 60-40 split for somebody. But I think for Ollie Gordon, for me, it's kind of that post hype, right? He had a bunch of hype after last season.
Yeah.
And then he came back this season and it didn't necessarily go well. I think we have to ask ourselves why that happened, because
It was like the college football 101 too, and like college football fantasy. Yeah. And he just completely face planted. So yeah,
that doesn't always mean it's a bad player, right? There
No.
could have been some bad things happening around them. And oftentimes that creates a discount on that guy that we can capitalize on, especially at the running back position. I'm looking to do that. So that's kind of my stance. Yeah, the post-hype pre-draft sleeper. Yeah.
I know that's a special category, the post-hype rookie sleeper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Never played an NFL snap yet.
Post-hype, right.
Yeah, but I think Ollie Gordon is that. Yeah, that was good stuff. And I love the Devin Neal shout, because he is getting a lot of steam. And I just watched him like last night or the day before, and we liked it. Those feet are very nice.
There's just so many good players, like Bayshell. We didn't mention Bayshell Tootin and LaQuint Allen. I think they're both 2 good running backs. Like, there's just going to be running backs. Every team's going to get a new running back, and it's
okay.
Like,
Allen actually weighed in over 200 pounds. I think he was 207 pounds.
Yep.
And I was listening to the Fantasy Points show. I'm a big Fantasy Points guy. I love all of their stats and stuff like that, of course.
Yes.
So listening to their recap, and apparently he previously was listed at like 192 for the school. And so there's a bunch of worry about that. And then if you look at his data, he's like all receptions, like all receiving work. And so I was like, okay, this guy's going to need to be like a mega outlier. But if he's weighing in over 200, I'd at least be looking at him now where I might not have before.
I mean,
good shout.
Yeah. And just on that note, right? We talked about Brashard Smith. He weighed in at 195, and then Marcus Yarns weighed in at 189. The rest of the guys, 207, 215, 202, 233, 207, 212, 215, 226, 220, 211. Like, this is most of these guys are kind of the prototypical size. And so I think we're going to be firing darts on a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what that draft board looks like, where in past years, maybe there's a couple running backs at the top and then you're just firing late shots, where you might have some more in that upper echelon, and that'll see the draft boards shake out a little bit differently. So the wide receiver position, Jax, you talked about Jaylen Noel. Why don't you talk about him here in terms of him being a winner coming out of the Senior Bowl?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was not exactly that familiar with Noel's game. Let's just say I'm not a huge, Iowa State fan, right? You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know, man, but then as you start to learn it, I even talked to Thor today and learned a little bit more about him today, but like, basically this kid can fly, right? He's fast. So he's got great speed, and he, let's see here. I was looking at him. He was, yes. So like he basically was for the first 3 years he was in Iowa State, he was kind of a close to the line of scrimmage, maybe even as bad as a Malachi Corley type of, so close to the line of scrimmage player. At 2.7 ADOT, 6.8, 7.7 in his first 3 years. This past year is 12.2. He had his best yards per route run at that. He also, had more contested catches downfield. converted on 52% of those. So it was pretty darn good, and had a great PFF grade. He's got a great body. He's, 5'11", 200. I think he weighed in right around there at the Senior Bowl. I don't have his exact measurements, but, that sort of prototypical size, and he can fly. So all the things he can do, I think, according to Thor, when we were talking, he's like, this kid can play in the slot and win at the NFL level. So wherever he goes, if there's a, open, room in the slot for him, he could find his way there pretty quickly. And so Jaylen Noel actually has an opportunity to be like I said, an actual fantasy producer at the next level, should he get draft capital and, find his way into a depth chart that is a little bit forgiving. Obviously if he goes to like, I don't know, well, I suppose even if he went to someplace like Seattle Seahawks, maybe he could sort of slide in for, Tyler Lockett at some point. But, if there's a real blockade at the slot, maybe he has a harder time. But, he played a lot of the slot, early on and opened up a little bit. And I think he showed a lot of that as he was a tough cover at the Senior Bowl for sure.
Yeah. Just a couple of other notes. I think you hit on kind of the Senior Bowl stuff, right? And it was kind of eye-opening. Again, I said off the top, for wide receivers, what we want to see is 3 good days. And so I'm logging this stuff. I'm watching it as the Senior Bowl's unfolding. And I think he's the only guy that I heard, rave reviews about all 3 days of practice. So this is the one. This is the one that I'm the most interested in. Obviously, everyone says he's the winner, but just from a comparison standpoint to last year and the year before, the Lad McConkeys, the Puka Nakuas, right? This is the guy that generated the same level of buzz and almost nobody else did.
Right.
Just a couple of other notes. We're going to dig into their statistical profiles in much more detail in the coming weeks. But one that caught my eye right off the top with Jaylen Noel. Yards per team pass attempt in 2023, 2.15. In 2024, 2.53. Dominator rating in 2023 was 28%. In 2024, it was 32.6%. So those are good benchmarks. Those are back-to-back very strong years, and then a real strong showing all 3 days at the Senior Bowl. This guy looks like the total package and the real deal, and the hype meter is off the charts as well.
The yards per team pass attempt on his good season was what? 2 point what?
I've got this is according to Campus to Canton. In 2024, it was 2.53, and then in 2023, it was 2.15.
That's good. 2.53 is a good mark for sure.
Very good.
Yep.
Very good mark. Yeah, we like that.
Big piece of the pie. Okay, what about Jack? Is it Bech or Bech? Bech sounds kind of funnier because it sounds like your token white girl saying bitch. You know what I mean? Like batch,
Batch?
So let's go with that. Like
Yeah.
Jack Batch. Why is he somebody that we want? He was a 4th-year breakout, guys, at TCU. Good size, though. 6'2", like 215-ish. He was the recipient of that massive seam throw that you were talking about, Joe, where he went to Mossville. Jump in there.
Well, all right. He also caught the game-winning touchdown.
Yes.
Jax mentioned off the top, he's got this very just gut-wrenching story from the last month of his life with his brother passing away in that terrorist attack in New Orleans. But here's just something else I found just digging through stats, right? In 2021, as a true freshman at LSU, he led the team in receptions. Do you guys know who else was on that LSU team in 2021?
Do tell.
This dude named Trey Palmer. He's in the NFL. This other dude named Keyshawn Butte. He's in the NFL. This other dude named Brian Thomas Jr.
Keep coming.
Might have heard of him. And this other guy that I kind of remember us talking about a lot last year. Not sure what happened to him. Malik fucking Neighbors.
Yeah.
So listen, obviously he transferred to TCU. Obviously years 2 and 3, if you look at his stats, were not that impressive. But then a very strong year 4. And it's not like he had like a breakout, right? It's not like he had this crazy dominator rating, but to lead that LSU team in receptions in 2021 with those guys surrounding him, it's got my attention. It's not nothing. It's not nothing.
Yeah.
It's not nothing.
non-zero. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Definitely like that size and getting steamed up a little bit at the Senior Bowl, probably moving into the draft conversation for sure amongst some of these top guys. Without doing a bunch on the wide receivers yet, I will admit I am pretty intrigued as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't want to overhype him either, right? That was kind of a bit, right? He's a slot flanker. He's a slot flanker. He had a rough up and down day one by all accounts, a good day two, a good day three, and he was the MVP of the game. His statistical profile isn't mind blowing, but anyways, I just thought that was interesting.
I think he transferred because it may have been because like LSU wanted him to become a tight end. Because I mean, he had 25% of his routes from in line his freshman year. So it's not like he was a tight end, but 25% is not is a number.
Yeah.
Like that's a number. He had 88 routes from in line. So I don't know, man. Very interesting. I don't know. Thor was talking about people comping him to Adam Thielen. Who knows? I mean, he is kind of a great athlete. I mean, did go to LSU and did do that, and had to transfer circuitous route and then goes up and makes plays. I mean, this would be the best story for sure. So I'm here for it, but we'll have to see. I need to see more, is what I need to tell you.
I think he just proved. I think he proved he's not just a slot guy this week.
Right.
And that's, I think, the most I'm going to try and take away from it. We'll see what we learn from the combine. But yeah, he's a gritty little player.
Yep.
No doubt about it.
Yep.
Yeah, you said gritty.
Oh my God.
Yeah, hopefully he pulls some of those out on Sundays. But I will say, Jax,
high football IQ, real big blue guy.
Yeah, brings his hard hat and lunch pail every day and keeps his stick on the ice. Yeah.
This is a guy.
I will say, though,
this is a guy.
Jack Bech is a very, very tight end name. I will say that. Like that's an extra. That's your quintessential. That's this year's Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, that is a serious tight end name. Jack Bech. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with
Bech, please.
Bech.
I
he's a wide receiver. He's Tom
Bech
Brady's
now.
receiver on the New England Patriots. Jack Bech.
Oh,
remember him? Super Bowl 42.
Some classics. Okay, another tight end, guys, that was day one, came out steamy with a huge touchdown, killing a guy on a one-on-one route, was Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. Yeah, you saw the video, guys. Everyone was firmed up from that one, and I think I was too, in what's a deep tight end class. So pretty cool to see him shine at the Senior Bowl and kind of come out there. I'm not necessarily I don't really necessarily have the pulse of college football. And I know you guys aren't on the East Coast where Miami is, but was he in the realm of those top few tight ends previously, boys? Or was he not a name that was really talked about?
I can take this.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, look, so me and this, you're going to like this one, boys. I was on the Sonic Truth podcast with Theo, and Theo likes Elijah Arroyo better than he likes Harold Fannin. And so I'll give you the whether or not he was on the map by telling you the story I told Theo, which is that Harold Fannin in week 14 this year had 17 targets in a game. So he had 17 targets in a game. He ended up actually getting more than that in the bowl game, but 17 targets in week 14 this year. That is only one target more than Elijah Arroyo had in his first 3 seasons in college football. So, yeah, he was not on the map early on. Elijah Arroyo with only 16 total targets in 2021, 2022, and 2023 combined. This year, he did great. I mean, he was good, but he was still only 1.70 yards per route run. He does rip it though. He has an 8.8 average yards after contact for his career. He was 9.1 yak per reception this past year. That's like David Njoku levels there. There's not very many tight ends that do that. Brock Bowers was flirting with that, and actually Harold Fannin flirts with that too. But so to me, Harold Fannin is by far the better tight end prospect if you're going to be drafting one in your rookie drafts. But Elijah Arroyo has run after catch ability, and a little bit of downfield moxie, but I'm not sure he's he may be too much more Mike Gesicki or Kyle Pitts than he is,
Oh,
Jonnu Smith or Brock Bowers, if you will.
Uh,
easy on Grease Lightning there, buddy. Huh?
You
You know
notice
I
how I
like Mike
put
Gesicki.
Kyle Pitts and Mike Gesicki as the same failed prototype?
How dare
I'm
you
gonna
insult Mike Gesicki like that?
Thank you.
I'm gonna object here. I'm gonna object.
I did so much there.
All right, listen. Arroyo went to Miami. Fannin went to Bowling Green.
Mhm.
It's a different level of competition, just different
Uh-oh.
situations, right? Number 2, and listen, I'm not going to pretend like I've seen all of Arroyo's film yet, nor have I seen all of Fannin's. Going into the week, I was way more interested in Fannin. That's the guy I wanted to learn the most about. But from what I did watch from Arroyo, I liked the way he could extend for the football in stride, right? He was smooth at that for a man this size moving that fast. He absolutely broke Twitter on day one of the Senior Bowl. I did not have Arroyo being the most talked about, most tweeted about, most clipped guy on my bingo card by any means. I think, it looks like he's a guy that's too physical corners, too big and fast for linebackers, and clearly came away from the Senior Bowl week being the best tight end there, the guy who dominated all 3 days of practice. So Fannin was stepping up in competition and didn't show out nearly as much as Arroyo did. Arroyo doesn't have the statistical profile that Fannin did. I'm not saying I know the answer. I definitely want to see them both at the combine, but I mean, I came in expecting Fannin to be the guy, and I walked away thinking, I think it might be Arroyo.
Yeah, I do like the athletics, and I do kind of like that pedigree from Miami, right? I think the competition is stronger. We've seen a lot of history of Miami tight ends coming out and being good. Obviously, you're not, standing on that as your only leg, but I think it's an interesting conversation. And regardless, I think there's a lot of tight ends that we're going to be attacking in this draft, Arroyo being one of them via that athletic
Hold on.
profile.
What do we?
I'm getting signals. Hold on. Wait, I'm getting a signal. I'm getting
Oh.
some vibes, some Xavier Legette vibes from Joe Kuvatakis on this one. He loves guys who do nothing for like 3 or 4 total seasons. Then they put on a pair of underwear and run fast once, and he's totally in love.
Yeah, you know who else I liked is Theo Johnson. This is the tight end position, sir. Athleticism matters way more
I
than
agree.
at wide receiver. So
Fight.
we need to see them at the combine. And I don't know, Arroyo, and I didn't love Leggett that much, and he was a first round pick. Damn it!
I don't know, Joe. You liked you some Xavier Legette. So yeah,
I fall in love with stories and narratives. He had a great one. It's the same reason I like Bech, if we're being honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I
Very
understand.
good.
I understand the love for Arroyo, and I do think if you're swinging for the fences, he's in that phylum of swing for fences. But why wouldn't you want to swing for the fences with a guy like just take this one data point, right? So like you want to talk about PFF receiving grade. How many times was Harold Fannin over like 80 receiving grade? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games this past season. How many times was Arroyo over 80? Once.
How many times
I'm
did
just
Fannin
saying.
have his hand in the dirt, Jax? I'm going to throw your own argument
I will
back in
tell
your
you.
face.
I
All
will.
right, let's go.
Yeah, I will tell you. So they're both about the same in the dirt. Fannin lines up career inline 40% of the time. That's Arroyo, actually. Hold on. Arroyo
Yeah,
40%
Arroyo.
of the time, and Fannin 43% of the time. So Fannin is in line more. Now, here's something interesting. Hold on. Slot, 34% of the time you'll see Fannin in the slot. You'll see Arroyo in the slot.
51.4 this year and
47%, right? But look at out
So he's a
wide.
better receiver. Is that what you're telling me?
No, because here's the
No,
thing.
no.
You know where Fannin lines up. A good almost 20% of the time, 26% of the time this past year was out wide, and he was breaking fools out wide. So he is
That's what I was getting at.
the type of player that can win on routes from all over the field, from inline, from all over the place. Because obviously he did, because he had 3.74 yards per route run. I mean, he was being targeted all over the place, and he's an athletic freak. I don't think I just don't think that, one day or one little week of practice where a guy made a good double move, which he did, is not going to sway me away from a guy who is producing. And you want to talk about level of competition. In the 2 games early in the season, at Penn State and at Texas A&M, Harold Fannin went 11, 137-1, 8, 145-1. I mean, 18 yards a catch against Texas A&M on the road. Dude is a real legit player. Not going to talk me off
I
of it.
can't. I showed up to a gunfight with a knife just now.
Yep. You can't talk me off Fannin until he proves it wrong. Like, this dude is just doing stuff that we don't see players do. Now, I know it is Bowling Green. I do know that. And of course, I'm not saying that he's a tight end 1. Tyler Warren is a tight end 1 with a dot, right? Like, put him in Tyler Warren is just the chalk at tight end. I'm fine with that. But once you're starting to swing for the fences, I agree that Arroyo and even Gunnar Helm, right? Like, some of these guys, these all have some swinging upside, and Fannin's just the cream of the crop of upside, at the tight end position.
Yeah, I'm admittedly, just helmet scouting a little bit here.
Sure.
The fact that Arroyo showed out over
Yes.
Fannin, and also I watched some Fannin clips, and I don't know, I just had questions about his speed and his actual athleticism. So this is why I always, particularly at tight end and at running back, I really, really need to see the combine.
By the way, check this out, because I didn't see it yet, but when Thor was on the show, he mentioned that the zebra tracking had a different story to tell about the movement of Harold Fannin versus Elijah Arroyo at the Senior Bowl, deceleration and his ability to move in certain situations. So I think Travis May retweeted something to do with this. We should check it out. Maybe I'll retweet it, but check it out, because I haven't yet to see it, but Thor was making the case for Harold Fannin for these reasons of movement, which is, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, so I'll check
the zebra tracking is part of processing the process. I will be diving into that.
Ooh, I love that.
I like it. And be sure that you also dive in to this week and every week's episode of the Undrafted Fantasy Football Podcast, where Jax will be interviewing the best names in the industry to give you the best information to prepare for your drafts. Little plug in there, my man, but let's move on to some of these losers, because I have to be honest, it hurt my soul watching Jax get such a big win there, Joe, so we can't really let him.
Can we talk about Mason Taylor real quick at tight end?
Go for it.
Okay, 100%.
Mason Taylor, LSU, Jason Taylor's son, Hall of Famer. You were talking about nepotism earlier. I know you like that, Trav. Anyways,
I'm in.
It sounded like, by all accounts, again, we weren't there, but everything I was reading, all the clips I was seeing, I saw some sweet one-hand grabs from Mason Taylor. Sounded like he showed up pretty well also. So I didn't want that to go without being said. And I also just want to point out to our listeners, the depth of this class is primarily at running back and tight end. And just at this Senior Bowl, there are like 3 guys, and Gunnar Helm didn't even show up. So 4 guys that could end up being top 3 round picks. So Mason Taylor is a name to keep track of as well.
Yep.
Very good. LSU tight end, talk about helmet scouting, son of an athletic freak. I am in head first. Let him kill me like Thad Moss did, right?
Oh, yeah. Thad Moss.
Oh, that was a tough one. I actually wasn't in on Thad Moss, and I'm very thankful for it, but maybe that might be a data point for me not to go in on Mason Taylor. But yeah, we kind of talked about some of these quarterbacks, and the biggest loser, it was very, very widely spread. People were on rooftops banging pots and pans about this, and Jalen Milroe was the biggest, I think probably one of the biggest losers overall at the combine, or at the combine, getting ahead of myself here, the Senior Bowl. I didn't see like too much, but from what I did see, he was airmailing fools. He was dirt napping throws over the middle. And he did come in as a very polarizing player already. So, Jax, I'm going to kick to you. What did you see, and how did that necessarily shift your narrative to from what it was previous to the Senior Bowl? Because I really want to know what you thought beforehand, because I don't know if this necessarily would move that needle, right? But fire in.
I think we have to, again, it's a dynasty show. I think we have to think about it in terms of value. And when I was on the Sonic Truth podcast this morning, we did a mock draft, and I ended up getting in a super flex mock. I ended up getting Jalen Milroe and selecting him myself, which I'm not even a big Jalen Milroe fan, at like 204, 205, something like that. I think it was 205, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. 205, right? So 205 in a rookie mock. So if you're drafting Jalen Milroe there, it's all pure upside. I don't necessarily think that Jalen Milroe is like a lock to be good in the NFL by any stretch of the imagination. Matter of fact, I would put it at below 50% chance that he's a functional, viable, successful quarterback in the NFL. But I do put it at well over 50% that he'll be drafted in the top 50 picks potentially. I think that's pretty likely that maybe he goes early second round. Now it's possible he doesn't, but early second round or better. And if he goes early second round or better, we've seen, the Will Levis, the Jalen Hurts himself, Drew Brees. We've seen quarterbacks taken in that range. Lamar Jackson, taken in that range who have succeeded and been given an opportunity to play. And if he does play, if he plays, he's probably going to be a lot like Justin Fields at the very least, maybe a little bit that leaves to be desired in the pass game, but dude's athletic. Theo Greminger mentioned that he hit 22.5 miles per hour, which probably means he's going to run a 4.4, which probably means he's going to be, everybody's going to get pretty excited about him at the Underwear Olympics at the, combine. But all that being said is, when he's drafted, in the mid second round of your super flex rookie draft, that you have to pay attention. I don't think I'm pushing him way, way high, but in those ranges, I think he's worth a look. And I guess he played a little bit better. Thor was saying he played a little bit better later, in day 2 and maybe in the game. I didn't watch the fucking game. Please, that's a waste of my time. I'm obviously much more important than watching the Senior Bowl. Right. I don't have time for that shit. I'm killing spiders. I'm doing stuff. I got, plenty to do. You know what I mean?
Business moves to be made.
Yeah, dude, come on, please. So beneath me. But I mean it. Who knows? It is kind of a funky setup for the quarterbacks in the first place. So I think that's the advice. And I'm just ready to catch the falling knife with him. What are your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, going back, there was so much negative dialogue about Milroe during the Senior Bowl, from hand size to he's not an NFL quarterback. And I don't like these sweeping generalizations about these guys. This is one of the rare instances where at the quarterback position, you kind of filter out the negative and focus on the positive. And I think most of the time it's the other way around. But at the Senior Bowl, because they're at such a disadvantage, the guys who show out, like the Jaxson Darts, you make a special note of that because that's rare and usually a good signal. But the guys who don't necessarily adjust quickly enough, I don't think we can write them off yet. So I'm quarterback, like we said, hardest position to analyze. I'm not ready to write the book on this guy by any means after 3 days of practice with a bunch of new teammates and a new playbook. So we'll see. I'm sure he's going to show out at the combine. I do think he's going to get pretty good draft capital, probably round 2, worst case round 3. And a guy that's got that athleticism is going to have fantasy value when he does play.
Yep.
Like Malik Willis is sort of like the floor, in my opinion.
Your guy, Jalen Hurts, went to the Senior Bowl and did not play well either. Famously flamed out at the Senior Bowl as well. And look, he's in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean?
Second one.
Second Super Bowl.
Right. He's in the second Super Bowl. I'm not, obviously, I will say Jalen Hurts has a little bit of luck on his side, having the best roster in football. We sort of all agree there. So, could he elevate a shitty roster? Probably not, but who cares? What if Jalen Milroe gets a little bit lucky? Exactly. He's still a very dangerous player. Dude, that 4th and 5 throw to AJ Brown, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, in the championship game. That was a big play in that game, dude.
He makes some solid ones too.
Dude, if they don't convert there, the whole game changes. The whole game changes. And he goes down the field, that left sideline to AJ Brown, threw it in a bucket. I was like, okay, I'm not familiar with your game, sir. That type of thing. But but really, so anyway, circling back to Milroe, I totally agree. He's somewhere between Malik Willis, which would be the poop on the shoe, to Jalen Hurts, which is not quite that for sure. I just don't think he's that player, but somewhere in there is what he is, which is a big range of outcomes, which is the whole point, that we have very little to know if he's more like, Justin Fields, or if he can be more than that. We just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Weird data profile too. Like he
Yep.
regressed and had a worse season last year. I think he lost a lot of money not coming out and declaring for the draft last year, where he probably would have gotten drafted
Maybe.
higher than he. Well, actually, maybe not. No,
You
because
might
if
be
you
right,
think
though.
about
I mean, there's a lot of good quarterbacks,
because
but you may be
the
right
quarterbacks
still.
that were in that draft, and then
Yeah.
I think the reason why he could be going in that top 50 is because there's few quarterbacks. Because
True
I
that
think if
too.
there
Yep.
was 4 or 5 good ones, he's probably not in that conversation, because I haven't watched a lot of the tape, but even just the data alone tells me that he's not worth a top 50 pick. I
But
don't
this
think
time
so.
last year, he was looked at a little bit different. Like he was kind of like the future 101, maybe,
People were questioning whether he was going to come out and waiting for the decision, right?
Yeah.
And just like, oh, is he going to come? Ah, you went back. So that's one less quarterback in the
Yep.
pool. You know what I
Very
mean? And
interesting
people were
point.
kind of thinking that was a hit. So yeah, I think it's interesting to see, because I think teams might be less likely now to give him that starting shot. But I mean, even like Malik Willis floor, if you're drafting him at the 205, is that bad for a Superflex team? Really? Malik Willis gave you like 2 or 3 solid starts this year. And I think what he did there is earned himself 2 or 3 solid starts as a backup for the next 4 or 5 years somewhere, right? And so I think he's one of those guys that we're stacking at the bottom of our rosters. And even a guy like Joe Milton, different like player than
Yeah, for
is
sure.
Malik Willis and him, but these are those backups who could have some longevity if they come in and capitalize. But obviously, Joe Milton's not going to, because the patron saint of Drake May is in there. So I won't get into that
No.
conversation again today, fellas. We're going to talk about these wide receivers, though. So losing wide receivers, Joe, why don't you fire me one?
Man, this is hard because overall, I hate to say it because we like wide receivers so much. I just don't feel like many of these guys are good. I'd say this is more of an expectation versus what happened during the week loser, not so much like the worst wide receiver there. So I want to kind of preface it like that. But Xavier Restrepo was the guy that I think most people were super excited to see. And he weighed in, he was 5'9", 200 pounds, I think stockier than most people expected. He was super elusive at Miami and a really good slot receiver that could play outside a little bit, made some big plays. And by all accounts, he was underwhelming. He was a big follower. He was just average on back-to-back days. So again, going back to, we want to see him stack good days. This guy didn't do that. And I think he came in, as like this very high profile, sexy slot receiver. And we walked away thinking he wasn't the best slot receiver there.
I don't have much to say about Xavier Restrepo. I really don't. Tom, you? No, he's good. We're good. Me and
I was
Tom.
just going to throw it to Tom, see if Tom had anything to
Tom
say.
is.
I see that you brought in a guest for
I would
today's
say
show.
he's a
Can't
great
stop
player.
smiling. Tom Brady
Yeah.
can't. He's just happy. Who can blame him?
Yeah, no, I haven't seen much of Restrepo, but I have looked at the data, and it just looks like he's going to be one of those pure slot guys. He was a late breakout, little on the undersized side, but what you said there, Joe, like 5'9" is short. But what I did want to say is that his yards after the catch took a significant bump from the year before last to last year, and that's something we'd like to see for a guy of his profile. In fact, it went up by like 3 yards per reception. So,
Yeah.
just to
One
note.
thing I do want to point out, this is a thought that I was having over the course of the week when Restrepo wasn't showing out, was he a product of Cam Ward, right?
Mhm.
Is him not showing out at the Senior Bowl, a subtweet that Cam Ward's actually the truth and was making Restrepo look good? That's kind of one of the things that crossed my mind. But then I had this conflicting thought. I was like, whoa, wait, where's Jalen? Where's Arroyo with Cam
Yeah.
Ward? But
Yeah.
anyways, this is is the Michael Penix, McMillan, Dunze,
Polk.
thing as well, right? It's just like, all right, who was carrying who? Were they all dope? Was it a Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and Jaden Daniels situation, right? I don't know, but
Well, I think the
data point
difference
to make me think
is
about that.
that the Washington guys did produce before, but
Yeah.
if I recall, and I'm looking right now, Cam Ward only had 1 year at Miami, right? So Cam Ward coming in made those guys produce all of a sudden, whereas McMillan and Rome, and they had a little
And
bit of
Polk,
numbers
they kind of
before
took
Penning.
turns. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So a little bit of something there, but I think Cam Ward could be a big piece of that, because we know that Elijah Arroyo wasn't commanding targets over him before Cam Ward got there. So
Yeah.
good take.
No,
Good take.
I think it's a Cam Ward data point.
I also think, and I made this point on the show with Thor. I think maybe just Restrepo is just like a gamer, like a good football player, like kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. Like he's not like this like otherworldly route runner, Tank Dell type of player. He's not Lad McConkey. I mean, he's just probably just a good football player. Like knows where to be.
Pretty lunch pail guy,
Yeah,
high
there you go.
motor. This is a guy.
This is a guy, Restrepo, who when he buckles up his chin strap, he's out there to play. That's what I'm going to say. That's so good. He brings his
Restrepo
lunch
snaps
pail
it on, bro.
every day that he's out there. I mean, yeah. This is
So you
this
know
is a
what
guy
those
too
guys
that
are?
I would say, yeah, this is a guy. Oh my god.
Those guys are 12-year CFL starters and end up going into the CFL Hall, is what those pure grit guys are.
You know, it's
We've
funny.
seen lots of them.
I mentioned like, would Danny Amendola light up the Senior Bowl? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying right, like, but is he a good football player? Yeah, he was a good football player. Like, I just sort of use Danny Amendola as a ridiculous thing, but it's like, at some
Lunch pail guy.
point, is he just going to be a guy who's pretty good? You know what I mean? And that's probably it. And useful in
Yep.
some ways, but not really a target monster. That's probably what you're getting with Restrepo. I mean, he is pretty thick though, dude. 5'9",
Much like Amendola, great name as well.
Yes.
Xavier Restrepo, kind of
No
a
doubt.
fun name that rolls off the tongue. Yeah.
This is a guy who's got a good name.
Yeah. There's another guy, Jayden Higgins. I don't really want to put him in the loser category, but I did want to hear more about him, see more from him, and I feel left wanting. I kind of wanted him to be T. Higgins, right? And I'm walking away thinking he's a power slot kind of guy from all the analysis that I saw and all the accounts that were there. I did see some cool routes from him. Some really interesting ways to break open into the middle. Like there was one where he was literally looking like he was going to fight his one-on-one defender, and then he just went the other way. Like he was running at him. Just a crafty guy, but all of the highlights I saw were in breaking routes. And so I heard people call him Michael Thomas 2.0 more than once, multiple sources, Debro, a couple other people were comping him to Michael Thomas. And what that tells me is, I don't think it's Michael Thomas. The lack of downfield separation concerns me. Our boy Biggs, loved him. So I definitely want to talk to him a little bit more because we didn't get the complete picture, right? But I just wanted to hear more about Higgins, and I don't feel like I got confirmation that his wheels up.
Well, he only maxed out at 29.1% slot routes at Iowa State. So I think he probably does a little bit more than that. Maybe they wanted to try him out there. That size is pretty nice, though, if he can play inside and outside.
Yeah, I'm not saying slot receiver. I'm saying he wins on in-breaking routes.
Yeah. Right.
So what's pretty interesting about these guys here, these are some guys, but seriously, Jaylen Noel and Jayden Higgins, they had a guy named Rocco Bech as their quarterback. Never heard of him. Don't I do know he completed let's see here, 59% of his passes this year at Iowa State. So not exactly a world beater, but you had two guys almost put up 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. Maybe they're good, right? I mean, it's certainly possible that they're just good football players. They went to the Senior Bowl. They both turned heads there. These two guys might actually be good. They have some pretty good underlying stats that, their per route run stuff is really good. Both of them, both Higgins and Noel. So I don't know, man. I'm open to these guys being actual NFL players. Higgins sort of that profiles that, who was telling me, was it Felix Sharp? I think last week was talking about like the Higgins is like the Hakeem Butler, there's always a guy at Iowa State, the big guy, so,
Mhm.
the big outside guy. And, Noel, though, is maybe the guy who's a little bit more exciting, has a little bit more of an NFL body that, closer to 6 foot, closer to 200, can burn, can play in the slot. So who knows? I think both guys will get a shot. Both guys will be drafted somewhere in that like day 2, maybe round 4-ish range, right? I mean, we would expect. So I don't know. They're pretty interesting players for sure, both of them. I don't know. I mean, we'll see what the model says too, because a lot of times it's like, it'll highlight someone and be like, now we're in on them. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if the model loves one guy and we can start to get excited.
Tell me more about Rocco. No.
Yeah, right. Rocco Bech.
Real quick, you touched on him a little bit earlier. Jalen Royals. Again, I don't think a loser. I think it's pretty clearly consensus that this guy was not 100%. He had a foot injury during the season. He missed a bunch of games. He showed up for the Senior Bowl. Everything I gathered, and you tell me if you saw anything different, was he was basically really good at getting open. He was doing great in the short area stuff. Everybody wishes he was at 100% because they would have liked to have seen him, turn on the Jets, which he wasn't able to do.
Yeah.
Jax, you hear anything different?
Yeah, I'm just hopeful that he's, he can be, somewhere in that Rashi Rice type of player that, that I forget who else they comped him to over my conversation with Thor. I'll have to go back and remember. I just can't remember right now for the life of me. But he came up with another guy that I thought, okay, this is good. I just think he's a good football player, and I'm excited to see what he can do. For the life of me, can't remember who he comped him to. But in any event, I'm all in with this Jalen Royals. But we'll see if he's healthy, right? I mean, that's obviously a big deal. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, boys, I'm going to move us off the losers because we are running long here, but we are going to talk one more player.
Shocker.
And this was a big shocker. Yes. Death, taxes, and us running long. Last guy was a big, let's say, surprise. Good story here too, fellas. And one who was repeatedly just burning defensive backs, and that was Tez Johnson. Thought he would be a very interesting one to kind of pull out and talk about because he would be a mega outlier from the stats or from the size perspective. Joe, you had him on here as weighing in only at 156. So before we dive in, I just want to talk about what kind of an outlier he can be. And I think he can be one because I liked everything that I saw, but I did a little bit of stat head digging here on undersized wide receivers, and I put the threshold at 170 pounds for wide receivers. So only 14, and this is since 1992, since targets started being tracked. So since 1992, only 14 wide receivers at 170 pounds or less have gotten 10 or more PPR points per game. 4 of those are Devontae Smith. One of them is Tank Dell. So 5 of those examples are within the last couple of seasons. And then if we look at wide receivers who have had or who are under 170 pounds to reach 700 receiving yards in the NFL, that list is even smaller at 11. Devontae Smith being 4 of those, and James Jett in the 90s for your Oakland Raiders, Joseph.
Oh, I remember James Jett.
He makes up another
Silver
3
medalist
of
in the
those
Olympics.
11. Very nice. Yeah, so 7 of those 11 were done by 2 people. So, and none of these guys were under 160 pounds. So we really, really hope that Tez Johnson can bulk up a little bit just to make himself a little bit more likely to hit in the NFL. But seeing Devonta Smith and Tank Dell should be a sign of encouragement because we are looking at a bit of a new NFL where some of these teams are seeing these guys differently and willing to use them differently than they have in the past. And so, Jax, do you think Tez Johnson is one of those guys that we should be looking at as the ability to be an outlier? A lot of people are already calling for him to go to Denver with Bo Nix, which is where that story comes from. But I feel like we just tried that with Troy Franklin. Get in there on Tez Johnson, though.
Don't ruin my Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims hopes with any more wide receivers going to Denver. I'm already triggered. I had, again, I don't mean to go back to Thor, but I had asked him about Tez because I looked at this Tez Johnson profile and I got excited. A lot of yards per route run year after year. Goes to the combine, is able to shake some people. I said, hey man, do we have a Tank Dell Lad McConkey situation here in Tez Johnson? I was ready to get excited and have this big, bold take, and he kind of poured a bunch of water on that and said, hey, probably not. You probably don't have that. So that's maybe just a little bit of wish casting, a little bit of sort of patterning, we're like, hey, one guy, then the next, and this is the guy. I just not sure. He brought up another guy, and you guys will both know this name, Jacob Cowing. I was like, perfect. That is perfect. It's the somewhere between Jacob Cowing and Tank Dell is Tez Johnson. I was like, huh. So, depending on where he's drafted, right? If he's drafted in the second or third round, he's probably more likely pretty close to this Tank Dell situation, or at least he's going to be deployed with an opportunity to show he's Tank Dell or not. Whereas if he goes in the fourth, fifth, or sixth round, maybe, a little bit later, maybe he just gets parked like Jacob Cowing did to some degree and doesn't really get a chance to show. But that's kind of the idea. I mean, he is 156, so it's not like he has value in the running game, right? He's kind of a one-trick pony when he's out there. It's I mean, I don't think he can play in Chicago. The wind will fucking sweep him off the field if it gets a gust. I mean, he's got to play inside, I think. I'm not sure what the rules are with this kid, but 156 is light AF. I know for a fact Joe's been dating. Never mind. I'm not going to go there. But hold on.
Sorry. Tom.
Don't worry. It's all good. But yeah, so anyway, I just think it may be, one of those situations where we talked about Brashard Smith and we talk about, some of these guys just, we start to wish cast them to their very highest level outcome. And a lot of times it's, there's a lot of outcomes of, as you point out, Trav, over 40 years, all the motherfuckers that were that size did nothing, and except for Devontae Smith, who was one of the best college wide receivers we've ever seen, and Tank Dell and Joan Jett.
James Jett. Silver medalist James Jett.
And the Destroyers.
A Grammy Award winner, Jane Jett.
James Jett, Tim Brown, Rocket Ishmael, Jeff George. It was
they were all
time.
They were all at the concert. Yeah, I know.
Anyway, all right. Here's the thing that I can't help but stop thinking about. Tez Johnson, 156. I knew everyone was going to make Tank Dell comparisons.
Right.
One, Tank Dell dominated all 3 days and was blowing the place up, and Tez Johnson was not that. Tez Johnson was winning his one-on-one routes, which are set up for a guy who's 156 pounds to win, right? Yeah. He should be winning those. If he's not winning those, it's a huge concern. But I don't think he was wowing as many people as Tank Dell was. Number two, and this is the thing that scares me, is like, Tank Dell was this exception to the rule. And he made us change the way we looked at wide receivers and opened the door to all these lighter wide receivers, sub 165 wide receivers. Tank Dell has had season-ending injuries 2 years in a row.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we were wrong, not Tank Dell the talent, but maybe we were right to question the validity of the 165-pound or less, 156-pound wide receiver in the NFL or player in the NFL. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm terrified that we were terribly wrong on Tank Dell and way too quick to drop our priors.
Right.
But again, I'm a sizist and an ageist and all these things when it comes to football. So I want to stay open-minded, but were we right about Tank?
Maybe. Yep. No, that's a great point.
But 156, I'm scared. He's highlighted in red on my spreadsheet.
Yeah. Well, and I think that draft capital and that landing spot is going to be massive for him, because we look at these guys and Devontae Smith went into a pretty good situation. But I would even say, despite that good situation, I don't know if his box score stats live up to a top 10 NFL draft pick, Devontae Smith. You know what I mean? I don't know if I would want to be putting him as the number one wide receiver on a team. Same with Tank Dell. And then you look at another one of these guys is Xavier Worthy, who went into an awesome situation. So, I mean, I think it has to be an elite situation for some of these guys to succeed. And there's not very many of those that exist. So,
and for the ladies listening, Joe is really good in the sheets. Really good in the sheets. The spreadsheets.
He's also taken though.
Oh, I mean,
But the
come on.
Dynasty Underground, his spreadsheet work stays here, ladies.
We don't
okay?
have to. We can make up any story about Joe's backstory and his girlfriend and or wife. Either one of them. Neither one of them are going to get too upset about it. Trust me.
Yeah.
No,
They're gonna be fine.
Neither are
Both of them.
listening.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly. Obviously, yeah. Imagine the roles are reversed, and they're talking. Your girlfriend and or wife has a podcast thing like this, talking about whatever it is that might interest them. How long could you tolerate watching? 12 seconds.
I wouldn't.
Like,
I'd
Talking about the
I'd
royal
make all the
family.
graphics.
whatever it
I'd
is, you'd
make
be
all
like,
the graphics for it.
I mean, I can barely listen to her talk when she's talking to me. I mean, never mind. Yeah.
We might want to cut this part just in case they listen.
No, this is
our wives.
Amen to that.
This is
brother.
the stuff. This is the stuff that
This
sells.
is gold. Yeah. So anybody
All
who's
right.
listening, we really appreciate you sticking around to
Yeah, we
listen
did
to
it.
us
Especially
three
our wives.
muckfiles
Yeah.
talk about fantasy football. Lots of good stuff happening. I did mention off the top, you're going to see some new stuff on the YouTube channel. You will notice that our another sweet project that we've got, of course, that we've mentioned on this show is Uncovered, where you can find the best team specific content in the industry. That's actually split off to its own YouTube channel now. And so this YouTube channel will be only fantasy football content. And if you want your team specific NFL content, go to uncovered_NFL on YouTube. You can find it. It's also at the bottom of our YouTube page as a featured channel, and it'll stay there forever. So please go subscribe to that. We're trying to build up the following and get a bunch of people transitioned over there to be watching all of that stuff too. So for Jax, for Joe, I am Trav. It has been a good time talking about Senior Bowl tonight. Until next week, it only starts now. It's gonna get better. Let's get it, fellas. Peace.